Welcome back to The Political Bridge, the podcast dedicated to fostering thoughtful dialogue across the political spectrum. I'm your host, Ada. Today we're diving into a fascinating procedural tool in Congress that often flies under the radar, but has significant implications for how legislation gets made: the discharge petition. This mechanism allows a majority of House members to force a vote on a bill that's been stalled in committee, effectively bypassing party leadership. It's a powerful tool, but is it a democratic safeguard or a dangerous subversion of legislative order? We'll explore whether Congress should more readily use discharge petitions to bypass party leadership on key legislation. Joining me to dissect this are our regular commentators, Nico and Jordan. Nico, let's start with your perspective.
Thank you, Ada. From a conservative standpoint, the discharge petition, while seemingly democratic, often undermines the very principles of deliberative governance and accountability. Party leadership, particularly in the House, serves a crucial function: organizing the legislative agenda, ensuring bills are thoroughly vetted in committee, and building consensus within the caucus. A discharge petition, by sidestepping this process, can force poorly considered legislation to the floor, lacking proper committee review or bipartisan negotiation. It risks creating a legislative free-for-all, where special interest groups can push narrow agendas without the necessary checks and balances. For example, in 2002, a discharge petition was used to force a vote on campaign finance reform, which many argued had not received adequate committee scrutiny. This tool can fragment party discipline, making it harder for leadership to enact a coherent agenda, which ultimately leads to less effective governance and more political chaos. It's a mechanism that prioritizes immediate gratification over sound legislative process.
Nico, I respectfully disagree. From a progressive perspective, the discharge petition is a vital democratic safety valve, not a chaotic free-for-all. It empowers the majority of the House to act when party leadership, often beholden to special interests or extreme factions, obstructs popular legislation. When bills with broad public support, like universal background checks for firearms or climate change initiatives, are intentionally buried in committee by a speaker or committee chair, the discharge petition offers a pathway for the people's representatives to fulfill their mandate. It ensures that critical issues aren't held hostage by a small minority or a single individual. For instance, in 2015, a bipartisan group attempted to use a discharge petition to reauthorize the Export-Import Bank, which had been allowed to expire, costing American jobs. This demonstrated its potential to unlock gridlock. This mechanism reinforces the idea that Congress is a body of equals, not merely an extension of party leadership. It's about accountability and ensuring that the will of the majority can actually be expressed.
Both of you have laid out compelling initial arguments. Nico, you emphasize the importance of established legislative process and the role of leadership in fostering coherent governance. Jordan, you highlight the discharge petition as a tool for democratic accountability, preventing leadership from stifling popular will. My first follow-up question to both of you is this: how do you reconcile the tension between legislative efficiency and democratic responsiveness when considering the use of discharge petitions? Is there a point where one outweighs the other, or are they inextricably linked in this debate?
Ada, legislative efficiency and democratic responsiveness are indeed linked, but the discharge petition often distorts that link. True democratic responsiveness comes from well-crafted legislation that addresses public needs effectively, not from hastily passed bills. The committee system exists precisely to ensure that legislation is thoroughly vetted, potential consequences are explored, and amendments are considered. Bypassing this process, as a discharge petition does, sacrifices efficiency in the long run because it can lead to flawed laws that require constant correction or create unintended problems. Consider the Affordable Care Act, which, despite its merits, faced criticism for its complex implementation, partly due to a fast-tracked legislative process. Furthermore, leadership's role in setting the agenda is itself a form of democratic responsiveness, as they are elected to represent their caucuses and guide the legislative priorities. Undermining this structure through frequent discharge petitions doesn't make Congress more responsive. It makes it more chaotic and less capable of producing durable, effective policy. It's a short-term fix that creates long-term instability.
Nico, I think you're conflating efficiency with obstruction. When leadership intentionally blocks bills that have clear majority support, that's not efficiency. It's a breakdown of democratic responsiveness. The committee process is essential, but it should not be a graveyard for legislation. If a bill sits in committee for months or years without a vote, despite having a majority of House members ready to support it, then the system is failing. The discharge petition restores that balance. It forces a conversation and a vote, which is the very essence of democratic responsiveness. The idea that all legislation passed via discharge petition is poorly considered is a generalization. Often, these are bills that have been thoroughly debated publicly and have strong bipartisan support, but are blocked for purely political reasons. For instance, legislation on government shutdowns or debt ceilings has sometimes been considered for discharge petitions when leadership failed to act. The public demands action on critical issues, and when leadership fails to provide it, the discharge petition allows the majority to deliver. It's about ensuring the legislative branch isn't paralyzed by a few powerful individuals.
Both of you have made strong cases for your positions. Nico, you've emphasized the importance of the established legislative process and the potential for discharge petitions to introduce chaos and undermine the careful deliberation that committees provide. Jordan, you've highlighted the discharge petition as a crucial tool for democratic accountability, preventing legislative gridlock and ensuring the majority's will can be expressed. My next question asks you to steelman the opposing view. Nico, what's the strongest argument for why discharge petitions are necessary, even from your conservative perspective? And Jordan, what's the most compelling reason to be cautious about their overuse, even from your progressive viewpoint?
From a conservative perspective, the strongest argument for discharge petitions lies in their potential to break genuine legislative logjams, especially when leadership becomes overly autocratic or when a truly bipartisan consensus exists but is being deliberately suppressed. There are rare instances where a speaker, perhaps due to pressure from an extreme wing of their party, might refuse to bring a broadly popular and thoroughly vetted bill to the floor. In such specific, extreme cases, a discharge petition could serve as a necessary check, preventing a single individual from completely stifling the will of a significant majority of the House. For example, if a critical national security measure had overwhelming bipartisan support but was being held hostage by a small faction, a discharge petition could be a last resort to ensure the nation's safety. It's a tool that acknowledges the potential for abuse of power by leadership, even if I believe its regular use is detrimental.
From a progressive viewpoint, the most compelling reason to be cautious about the overuse of discharge petitions is the risk of undermining the very institutional stability and deliberative process we often champion. While I see them as a vital corrective, their frequent deployment could indeed weaken the committee system, which is designed for detailed scrutiny and expert input. If every controversial bill that stalled in committee was immediately subject to a discharge petition, it could incentivize less thorough committee work, as members might anticipate simply bypassing it. Furthermore, it could make it harder for leadership to negotiate complex, comprehensive legislation that requires careful coalition building, as individual members might always be looking for a shortcut. While I believe the benefits outweigh the risks in many cases, we must acknowledge that a constant state of procedural warfare could ultimately lead to less effective, less coherent policy, even if it is more responsive in the short term.
Nico and Jordan, your insights have truly illuminated the complexities of this procedural tool. We've explored how discharge petitions can be seen as either a vital democratic safeguard or a dangerous subversion of legislative order. It's clear there's a delicate balance between ensuring legislative efficiency and upholding democratic responsiveness, and both sides present valid concerns and benefits. We appreciate you sharing your perspectives on this often overlooked but incredibly powerful mechanism in Congress. Thank you for joining us on the Political Bridge. To our listeners, we encourage you to delve deeper into the legislative process and understand how these tools shape the laws that govern us. You can find more information and resources on our website. Join us next time for another engaging discussion. Until then, stay informed and keep bridging those political divides.